Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about the latest non-fiction book I've read, The Great Turning by Dr. David C. Korten. The full title is From Empire to Earth Community. Dr. Korten is an economist, and when he's writing about economic theories and ideas of the past and the present, he's on firm ground and he's a riveting writer. He talks about empire. When he was referring to empire, he's referring to the 5,000-year history of patriarchal command structures as are present in every nation on the planet. We're a tiny little population at the top that holds incredibly immense amounts of power and wealth, and the huge proletariat at the bottom, who are essentially wage slaves if they're lucky, otherwise they're just left out to die. And yes, he has a rather socialist view of the situation because, like it or not, reality happens to have a progressive liberal bias. And it's fascinating when he's writing about this. Now, he's also written two other books that are very important, and one is the When Corporations Rule the World and the Post-Corporate World. And I've purchased the Post-Corporate World already, and in fact it may be at my shipping address by today, so I may be able to pick it up. So I'll be reading that one shortly. And it has a little more firm footing in economics. This book kind of goes off the reservation of economics a little. Let me explain why. When he's talking about Earth community, on the cover here, he's referring to a mature social structure where the individuals involved are about fair and equitable treatment for their fellow man. That the empire model has been broken, and everyone shares equally in the resources of this planet. Because, like it or not, this planet has limited resources. There's only so much stuff on this globe, and every human being on this globe has an equal share of those resources. We don't let it function like that right now, and we really should. Just because at the moment there's a really small percentage of people in charge doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And Dr. Korten is talking about how that can be changed. Now, he's created a foundation to help forward this. There's a magazine that he's part of running, and it's trying to put forth the idea that small-scale grassroots movements can help change the world and can help create a community where it's literally thinking globally, acting locally, and destroying the power structure that currently exists in a non-violent way. And this is an important book. It talks about some things in here that we need to do, because with resources limited, if we continue on the path we're on, we're a consumer capitalist society, we're all doomed. We are already using more resources than this planet has. Very shortly, within my lifetime or the lifetime of the next generation, we're going to hit a wall, and there's going to be a die-off. And the 7 to 8 billion people on this planet will be whittled down to 1 or 2. And a lot of those will only survive because they'll eat the rest. It's going to get ugly, folks. But we can avoid that if we start planning and we start behaving like adults and stop behaving like children. Now, he talks about the different stages of development. Childhood magical thinking, imperial thinking, which is the kind of thinking you see in amongst a lot of physical conservatives. Yes, this means conservative politicians, libertarians, and Tea Party members. Talks about social conscious people, and these are the ones who are like swing voters and the people who understand on some level that you have to think outside your immediate family, but they can be swayed either way, either towards the imperial thinking or towards the next stage, which is cultural thinking, which is when you begin to have a cultural conscious and you realize that the whole world is one family, and if we don't get along, we're doomed. And then the next one above that is spiritual conscious, and that's like the Dalai Lama, Buddha, the great thinkers, Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, things like that. People who have transcended, in many ways, the petty foibles of materialism and have now understood that we really are all one. Now, like I said, it's a good book. It's not perfect, however. He is an economist, but he uses both theoretical physics and biology to help support his argument. And as when it comes to being a theoretical physicist or a biologist, he's a really good economist. I know enough about theoretical physics to know that I know more about it than Dr. Korten does. And I know enough about biology to know that I know more than Dr. Korten does. At one point, he starts talking favorably about intelligent design theory, which really rankled me. And then I kept reading it, and he got to a point in the book where he started talking about a spiritual intelligence. And he gave an example of a pine tree that has a particular kind of fungus that infects its needles. And his point was that the pine tree, this tree, that life itself has chosen this path for this tree. That's not how evolution works, folks. There's no intelligence behind it. There is the blind watchmaker, to borrow Richard Dawkins' term. And it's this grasping at straws, trying to make evolution and theoretical physics apply to his ideas that really make his argument fall apart for me. He also has a habit of falling into the noble savage concept, talking about when the Europeans first came here, the warm welcome they received by the Native Americans, all over the place. In fact, North America, Central America, South America, and of course the genocide that they visited upon all of these peoples. And the problem is that the Native Americans on the North American continent, South American continent, Central America, were no more ethical and moral than anybody else. They didn't deserve to be wiped out, which is what happened to them in a really big scale. It was genocide, plain and simple. In North America alone, I believe that some of the research I've read is that 20 million Native Americans were wiped out in a 350-year period. But the noble savage myth is that they were somehow living in this paradise. They weren't living in a paradise. They had wars. They engaged in slavery. They engaged in wiping out people. They were human. Yes, it didn't mean that they couldn't be opening and welcoming to strangers. But it didn't mean that they were some kind of ethical or moral supermen either. And that, again, underscores his argument. So, it's a good book. I enjoyed reading almost 90% of it. And then when he went off that left field kind of thing, it kind of bugged me. So I'm going to read the post-capitalist, post-corporate world, and hopefully it will be a little more firmly based in economics, and I will get more out of it and maybe see his arguments a little more realistically. And if that's decent, maybe I'll move up to the first book, which was When Corporations Rule the World. So I can recommend his writing style. I don't know if I can recommend this book in its entirety. I can recommend it for some really good ideas, some important ideas, and things that have to be understood and that we have to follow, because if we don't, folks, and this isn't hyperbole, we're really gonna be doomed.